And we also had seen the cost of building, and especially here in Nairobi, was quite high.
Yes.
And we have seen that a lot of materials that now we use to build our houses from China.
Yes.
Looking at the utilities in the house, looking at some of the materials, toilets, sinks, curtains, all those building materials.
Yes.
Mostly we were sourcing them from China.
True.
And you do remember that after the borders were locked, after the lockdown, before the lockdown, the business was good, but after the lockdown, these things could not get into the country.
Yes.
How was it, and how has it changed after the cessation of movement was lifted by the president?
With the advent of the COVID-19 era, all sectors of the economy were affected, and the real estate was not spared either. In fact, it was one of the hard hit because of issues of most of the material we source outside the country. And also the cessation of movements, even inter-county. Someone from Kisumu want to buy land, want to buy a house in Nairobi. They need to come and view it. Remember, real estate you can't buy online only. You need to view it. So because of the cessation of movement, people are not able to travel from one point to another. So it dipped, big deal. But now, after the lockdown was lifted, we are seeing the recovery slowly by slowly. It's coming back. Albeit slowly, because remember, real estate is an industry that runs on leftover. People have to eat fast.
Yes.
People have to dress fast. There is the basic needs. And then from there, what people can be able to spare, that's what they take to real estate. Others even have to use something like loans. If you are not, people have been laid off. There's no job, so there's no security, even for acquiring those loans. So in the long run, we are realizing that even the project that we're running have become a problem. Most companies were running on something called off-plan. You buy off-plan, then as you build, they are paying. Now they are not able to get that money to pay. So they are not even paying their installments. So everything, some of the projects have come to a halt completely. And putting in mind even the project that has been completed, the people who are about to complete stop payments. So there's a lot of disruption that have been caused in the real estate. Although we are still hopeful, and we are positive that as time goes by, the industry will recover. Yes.
And some people do prefer buying a plot of land and developing it slowly.
Yes.
Others prefer to buy the house, a completed house, and others prefer mortgage. What has been the trend, and especially now that we have COVID-19 in the country?
The COVID-19 era has lasted since, I think it's around now 5 months. And because it's around 5 months then, there's the reorganization that has taken place is not that major. Yeah, so what we can say is that people are now trying to reorganize. People are trying to come up with ways in which they would fit. Because remember, someone had already gotten into a plan to pay a house, for example, and therefore that's something that was already running. So they were not able to get out of it. But those people who had been planning, I'm going to buy a house in the next 3 months, and then the COVID happened. Then what have happened? They have changed. There have been a shift in the mindset, and now they are saying, "I'd rather buy a land, I build at my own pace." Because remember, whether you took a loan, whether it's mortgage, you require that liquidity so that you can be able to continue buying. And there is a problem with liquidity. People are being laid off, right, left, and center. So even the security they had, even the saving they have, they are trying to spare it. People become risk averse in time of pandemic. You want to remain fluid, so because you don't know what happens tomorrow. You may take a loan and then you lose your job. You may use the money you have and then you don't get some other source of money. So people are becoming risk averse. And remember, real estate sometimes requires some people to go out there, maybe take a loan, and then believe in the next 10 years, I'll still be getting money to be paying it. But once people see now these unprecedented things happening, they are shying away, and therefore people now are buying just maybe vacant plot. They want to build at their own rate. So as a real estate industry, we are trying now to balance the two, whether to do houses and now or selling. You have to combine the two. Otherwise, you may be left out.
And speaking of mortgage, Looking at a country like Kenya, the houses themselves,
Yes.
the mortgages, I've looked at some of the mortgages, but they really need somebody to be either in a big business or having a big business that can afford to cater for that mortgage, or having a big salary
Yes.
that will be able to cater for the mortgage. What are the options? Because looking at the economy as we are Kenyans, mortgage, a lot of people are not taking mortgage. A person is preferring to either buy a plot of land, then perhaps the next 3-4 months, if you start by fencing, then you start by perhaps a latrine, perhaps a servant quarter. What has been the uptake now, especially on mortgage?
Mortgage, as I've said, is also a little bit risky.
Yes.
Because here we are talking about the future. And what this pandemic have shown us is that you can plan as, you know as little. Because if you talk to people, people are very buoyant about what they are going to do in 2020. And we are almost now at the end of 2020. And there was a very big disruption, and they did very little of what they had planned. And therefore, even the people who are talking about mortgage, or people who are already in mortgage, they were in a shock. Because as I have mentioned severally, even businesses are now performing. Whichever kind of business people are engaged in, every business has been touched. If you are talking about jobs, now even those people who are at job are finding the security of tenure is not guaranteed, because they may lose that job. Because if the company does not perform, and even some people have been put on notice that if we continue performing this way, we may have to lay more people off. So because of that, then mortgage, people have put a break to it. And even most of the banks today are not even giving those options.
Yes.
Because even the banks, the loans they have given are not performing, the mortgages they had given they are not performing, and therefore they have put a halt to all those options that were there. So because of that, the mortgage uptick has been very slow, according to the data that are coming out of the banks and other financial institutions, and even the housing, the financing companies that are able to give people housing. They are not taking that option anymore. So what now most people are turning to is buying land. If, for example, I had 3 million, I don't have that 20 million to buy a house, but I can go out there, buy a plot, let it remain there vacant. I'll build a servant quarter, as I've said, I'll fence, and then wait. See how it happens. If I get some little money, I'll throw in there and start the foundation, and slowly by slowly build what I intended to do in the past. Then remember, even now, even the issue of handing over, people have been buying the off plans, but even the companies have fallen short of the timeline they had given. Because as you said in the beginning, they have been acquiring material from China.
Yes.
And other countries out there. But now there was that issues of cessation of movements. So because of the breakdown of supply chain and the labor, remember most people who do labor here, for example, come from the rural area, they went home. So even the workers that were on site, they are not there anymore. The materials are not there on time. The supply chain was blocked. So what has happened is that even the delivery of the promised timelines is not happening. And because of that, people have become a little bit reluctant to continue with these issues of either off-plan or issues to do with mortgage because of what is happening.
And how has the market been looking at the construction industry? You need a lot of approvals from the government and from other government offices, including approvals, land rates and stuff. And these offices have been closed or are operating on half capacity.
Yes.
Yes.
That was one of the biggest disruption that we have had. Because I think land and housing and everything to do with real estate require a lot of approvals. Whether you are talking about buying land, you need to go for the land control board so that you can transfer land. If you are talking about you want to take a loan, or you want to take a loan and you want to do charges, you want your title charged, you have to go to the land to the registry, and all those things. The land board, the land offices, the registries had been closed.
Yes.
They were open just the other day. The board, the land control boards in the local areas had been closed for a while. So because of that, then so many approvals were not going through, and the ones that were in the pipeline you realize, for example, an office had 10 people. Only one person is working now. Others are working from home. And because of that, you are not even able to follow up, because anytime you go to ask, you are told the person who is handling this is working from home, or they are off now. And therefore, everything is moving at snail speed. And because of that, there is a lot of delays in matters real estate, in matters to do with charging of properties, whether you want to take a loan. So when there is a breakdown at one place, then it means even delivery. If, for example, you had sold land to people, for example, as a company, they need, there is a timeline on when you should give them the title deeds. But now when you go, you can go to the land control board for approval, for the transfer approvals. You can, the registries are closed. So what happened is, at the end of the day, you are not able to deliver on time. And what happened is that the clients sometimes also, they feel maybe, you know, the land is a motive issue, what is happening. So you have to come, talk to the clients and tell them what is happening. So there's that big breakdown, and the slowing of approvals, especially even on construction, buildings, because it involves a lot of people. You know, it's a chain. Once you submit your plan, it's a chain. And one person, if there's a breakdown on one person not being available, then it cannot continue down the chain, and you cannot start constructions. Yeah.
And before the coronavirus pandemic, and especially here in Nairobi, we witnessed a lot of houses without tenants, and especially for office space. A lot of office space, but no tenants. And after the COVID pandemic hit, we're also experiencing a lot of houses that companies like your company had bought, but no buyers. Have we had at least a slight change since then?
No, I think what we are experiencing is a whole paradigm shift, even on, especially if I start with office spaces. Because of what has happened, people had to become innovative, and people have started working from home, only to realize it is doable. Because we used to come to offices because that's the only conventional way we used to know of working. But now most companies have realized that people can work at home and deliver. So what has happened is a whole paradigm shift where we may not go back there again. Issues to do with offices, people have been able to turn away from offices to home, and they are still delivering the same way. Even internationally, we hear companies like Facebook and Twitter, all the workers are working from home. The system are working full-time, the same way. So because of that, even in this country, the problem that we had even pre-corona is still continuing. And in fact, it may get worse on issues to do with office space. But on issues of maybe houses, the rental houses, that may not be affected much, because people still need houses. Wherever they are, you have to stay at home. You only left the office, you went home. So you need even a better home. We are seeing people doing even video conferencing. And you realize maybe you used to stay in a house that was not as good, but now you realize, because I'm on this Zoom meeting, I need my house, of course, now is under scrutiny. So people now are also upgrading, even on the houses they live in. So therefore, other than maybe the issue of the purchasing power, and most companies are coming up with innovative ways of making sure that at least they retain their customers, they retain their tenants, even giving incentives and the rent cuts, so that at least they are retained until we get out of the woods.
You do have houses that you let out, right?
Yes.
And there are tenants and landlords, since the rents sometimes have been reduced, and there are defaulters, right?
Yes.
Somebody tells you, I cannot be able to pay, and I have no place to go. How are you handling that as a company that also manages property? This season, as even our president told us, is a time of us to come together, because it has not affected only one person. It's not someone does not just bring you a story. You are in it, and therefore you understand what is happening out there. If someone told you they lost their job, it's something that you know why. So we are trying as much as possible to work out, because sometimes some of the houses are not ours. We have our one who has, some of them we are agents, the owners. So you have to come together, the tenant, the agent, and the owners. You sit together, and then you reason out. How you may not be able to pay this. What are you comfortable being able to pay? How much? Because even the landlords, they have loans they are servicing. Some of them have the moratorium they were given is over. So they also need to continue paying for these houses. So of course they cannot give those houses for free.
But what usually, it's a balance, because you have to make that calculation whether you won't retain the tenants, because some of them is just a temporary issue. Maybe you may give them a break. There's some landlord who are telling their tenants, we will not charge you for 3 months. Reorganize, find a way, and then we resume. So they retain those tenants. Others have given them rent cuts. So you tell them, I've given you this percentage drop in rent. So it's a calculated way of trying to balance all this. Others, once there was a lockdown, they closed their houses and went home in the rural areas.
Yes, yes.
And for 3 months, they have not been back. They use their own padlocks and locks and everything. And it's giving the landlord a lot of headaches.
And companies like yours also a challenge.
Yes, it's a challenge.
Have you given, your company, have you given any tenants perhaps some relief or some
yes,
rent
we have done for 3 months. We did it in April, but it lapsed in July. So now at least we resumed the correction of rents. But we are also saying that because we usually try to build a rapport with our tenants, you also understand the situation of some of the tenants. Yes. So we are not pushing them that much. But you see, at the end of the day, we are in business. Yes. And therefore, it may reach a place where we are not able to accommodate anymore. But we are trying as much as possible. Not only making a blanket declaration that this has to be done, this has to be paid at this date. Yes. We are encouraging our tenants to have one-on-one interaction and engagement with us, so that we see how we can help them.
And talking of financial services, because I'm quite sure you also go for loans from financial institutions, the bank circles, and the landlords, as you've talked about, they have loans. Some people have mortgages that they have to pay. Have you perhaps sat down with financial institutions to tell them now, we need to change this. We need, if I have to give you this money, you have to give me more time, because looking at the market now in the housing, it's quite a challenge, and especially because of COVID.
Yeah, as you know, the real estate is sector is a capital-intensive industry. And therefore, rarely will you find a real estate player who does not have loans, because we use, we need that capital and pay through as the clients pays, then we pay them. So it had left us with no choice, because we had to go to our financiers, sit down and ask for those moratorium and other revised favorable terms. And they were very receptive, the financial institutions, the banks, and therefore they were able to give those moratorium. And as you said, the moratorium are not indefinite, as you know. So also the benefit that were advanced to us, we advanced to our tenants and our customers, but also it also had a timeline. Therefore, once the moratorium were, the period lapsed, we also had to find ways to be able to pay them. But it left us with no choice. We had to negotiate with our financiers.
Because I'm quite sure, because of the effects of COVID-19, prices of raw materials. If you are constructing a house perhaps of 1 million or 2 million shillings, the cost of items could be a little bit higher, and even labor. So what happens? Are you going perhaps to increase the prices of these houses?
No,
because at least you have to recoup your money, right?
Actually, I don't think the prices have gone high. Everyone is trying. It's a good thing, because Kenyans have united. And you realize in every sector, everyone is trying to balance, understanding the financial situation we are in, all of us. So even the raw material, I don't think in this industry, they have not gone high. In fact, this is a time now you can buy something cheaply.
Because a lot of people are disposing their property, right?
Yes, everyone is disposing their properties. You find you have a lorry which you are paying loans, and it's not getting business to deliver material. So now you have the transport cost, you have to reduce it. Yes. And luckily, even that time, the cost of even fuel went low. So because of that, there is some factors that are working around that made the cost at least remain a little bit constant, if not lower. So we cannot say at this moment that the cost of the materials has gone higher. The only issue is the timelines. Because even if, for example, you're buying something from China, then it will take longer. If you're buying something from somewhere, before it is delivered, before something is done, it's taking some time. And also, the way the government has been able to come in, and it is helping because of some of these tax amendments that they did. They are somehow translating, although in a trickle, in the industry.
Good to see that the industry has not collapsed yet.
Yes.
Indeed, and labor, of course, we will be taking our first short, quick break. But when we come back, of course, we will continue with our discussion on home ownership options, and especially now that we have COVID-19. And remember, it's one of the president's 4 big agendas in the housing, affordable housing actually, is one of the big 4 agendas. But let's first of all take that quick short break, and then we will come back. Welcome back. This is News Check, and today, as we had started a conversation of home ownership options, and especially now that we have COVID-19 in the country, and I have been speaking to one expert. Now we are fortifying this discussion because we are adding a research analyst at Homepoint Investment, Beatrice Mwangi. Welcome.
Thank you.
And perhaps to start with you, how has been the performance of the real estate industry or sector in the face and in the wake of COVID-19?
Thank you. So looking at the performance of this sector, if you compare Q1 when we didn't have COVID, that's January, Feb, and early March,
yes, and
the performance thereafter, there's been quite a change. If you look at the uptake of, for example, property has been slightly affected. And why I'm saying slightly affected is because we've either seen a stagnation in terms of, for example, prices in some areas, and in other cases we've had a reduction in property prices. But you see, when it comes to real estate, it's not as volatile as you would consider with all other these asset classes that we have. So yes, there's been that change. If you look at, for example, apartments, which have been in very high supply,
yes,
so it's turned into a buyer's market. So buyers have had the upper hand during this time. And we've had a decline in property prices. For example, apartments declined with around 0.2%. That's the prices. For offices, as my colleague had mentioned earlier on, then we've seen that reduction in terms of uptake, mainly because of the business restructuring around this time. However, if you look at land, the prices have actually been going up. And this is mainly in satellite towns. These are areas like Syokimau, Ruiru, Ruaka, because people have previously not focused on these areas. But you look at the times we were in, there's reduced disposable income.
Yes.
So people are looking for affordable options. So affordable land, affordable housing, and these are the areas people are currently focusing on. Yeah.
And what has been the shift? Because some people prefer to buy a plot of land and build later. Others prefer to buy a completed house, and others prefer a mortgage. For the last the second quarter, and especially you talked about the first quarter was doing a little bit better. The second quarter, the April, May, and June, how has the intake been for those 3 shifts? So
first of all, in terms of income, which has really gone down, if you look at the survey done by the Kenya Bureau of Statistics, yes, they found out that around 21% of households are not able to meet their household needs as they would previously. So this then means that in terms of mortgage uptake, it's been low. It's actually been low throughout the years, I would say.
Yes.
But now it even becomes worse because people don't even have that income to service such a mortgage. So most people are either looking for options of building on their own because it's affordable. At this point, everyone is looking for what is affordable to them. So you look at a mortgage, it's a requirement that you need to make your payment. As much as they've been restructuring, with people having borrowers meeting with their lenders and probably having these negotiations on how much can I pay now, can we restructure it, just to accommodate them. But there's been low uptake in terms of mortgages still. However, key to note, we really don't know how this is going to work out, but you see the government has been working on this Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company, and it's supposed to kick off in September. And that facility aims to lend to people at around to have people lended at 7% by financial institutions who borrow from the facility at 5%. And that is half the rate that we had in the market at the moment. So we expect maybe that is going to help with mortgage uptake, but we can only wait and see.
Yeah. Dominic, of course, we saw a big challenge in terms of transportation of materials, and especially when we had the cessation of movement.
Yes.
And let's look at or focus on the labor. If it's a building that was supposed to be having 20 workers,
yes,
because of course, the COVID-19 regulations, that house now cannot be built by 20 people, have to be reduced to around 15 or 10, and that also increases or stretches the duration of completion. Has this actually also eaten into the cost of housing in the country?
Yes, it does. Remember, the pricing is computed as a result of several factors.
Including labor.
Yes, including labor and also timeline.
Uh-huh.
And anytime you fall short on timelines, also you are incurring more. It has been affected in some ways that there was a panic rush towards the rural areas.
Yes.
By most people, especially once the disease was declared, and then there was the issue of the rumors of cessation of movement. So
yes,
people rushed home to the rural areas, and most of the laborers usually are sourced from there.
Yes.
So what happened is that even the ones that were left were also few. So plus we're now adding the fact of the social distancing issue. Now there were also the numbers of the people who are involved in it. So because of the movement of these laborers to the local areas, to the rural areas, then the sites are having a lot of issues. Because some of the time you realize the one who left, who had just rushed home,
yes,
maybe was a site supervisor or someone whose expertise was needed.
Yes.
And and then there was lockdown. They had no ways of coming back. So what happened is that at the end of the day, there was some delays. Although once the lockdown was lifted, that was collected, and now the construction are ongoing well. Although the other aspect of social distancing is a little issue. Although mostly inside rarely do we find people working that close.
Yes.
Generally, you are working at this, another one is working on that.
Yes.
So it's not such a big issue on social distancing. The issue are people who left, the laborers,
yes,
who went back to the local, and they never came back. Some of them found something else to do. Others are so unsure, they don't know why, when I come to Nairobi, what happened next?
Yes.
I feel comfortable here, I can go to the shamba and get some food. Maybe I go there and then the work is no longer available. So some of people didn't come back, but it's normalizing as time goes by. Yes.
Perhaps you can touch on that and adding the factor of raw materials, of course. Have they gone up? No, we had touched that with Dominic, but we would like also your input as you add on the labor, because as he has talked about challenges in the labor because other people just left and the building still has, or the construction has to go on.
Yes, so to add on that, first one is the disruption of labor in terms of supply, because the number of people you definitely had then reduces. I think another challenge that would also highlight is project financing.
Yes.
Yeah, initially we had developers or contractors have the money to continue the construction of the development. At this point, when that is disrupted, then even the number of people you're able to sustain on site is also affected, because there's a decline in terms of financing to your project. So that has also been a challenge. In terms of supply, these have been a huge, especially in the early months, looking at March and April, there was a disruption in terms of supply chain. Having people not able to acquire the materials, and that especially for people who get materials from outside. Yes. However, for people who then were able to get the materials locally, then these people who supply here take advantage of that, because there's that break in terms of supply. So they take advantage of that and are likely to increase the price of these materials. Then it becomes very expensive for a developer who had probably made provision for a certain amount of money to finish a certain unit, and now they're not either able to get the raw materials or they get them at an increased price. So it becomes a challenge.
And the housing and affordable housing is one of the key pillars of the Big Four agenda.
Yes.
What more can the government do, and especially now that we have COVID-19? Remember, being a Big Four agenda, one of the Big Four agenda, it is providing jobs for so many youths, and now things have changed. What more can the government perhaps do to bolster it, being one of the 4 pillars of the Big Four agenda?
I think from the beginning, the government took this initiative of the Big Four agenda, especially in housing, on itself, and forgot other players who are also in the industry, especially the private developer. Because if you realize, as I said, one of the factor that causes properties to go high is the cost of land. And anytime the government say it is coming to acquire land somewhere, the prices shoots, because we know it's the government, and you can, it's not like a willing buyer, willing seller. Because once you know the government, you can haggle over prices and everything. But you see, the real estate industry, the private sector already have land. Saiton has land, Homepoint has land. If they engaged us, because what we can do, if there was a very good private, public-private partnership with the government, we have land, we have the know-how, we are in this business, and therefore we have the expertise. Then they come in and give them now some tax incentives. They can help us in putting up infrastructures, major infrastructure like roads, things like sewerage, electricity. If they can, we can come. They were able to bring in the private developers into the fold, and then when you are given those incentives, it's better you are given the maximum, the highest price you can charge. You are given a ceiling. This, we give you this and this, let's have an agreement. Then you can also charge beyond this to sell a house. Then that would have been able, they would have been able to supply, because we are almost the 5 years jubilee term is almost over.
Yes.
And I don't know the number of houses they have supplied. I think is less than 5,000. I don't know. And maybe my expert here will give us the actual number.
Yes.
But the time is running out. It's because they took up that responsibility alone and ignored the other players which are there. Because today, if Homepoint construct houses, somewhere interior, there is no road, we take up, laying up the roads and drainage and sewerage,
Yes.
that cost will go to the customer.
Yes.
If the government took that initiative, and then as we build houses, we are given tax break, then the cost, the improved cost will now be translated to our customer. And therefore, that goal would have been met very easily if they were willing to incorporate the private developers.
Do you concur with Dominic that the government forgot some key players, and now they are realizing it now that the COVID pandemic has hit us hard?
I think first is to recommend them for the progress they've made. At least they've made effort.
Yes.
But as Dominic has said, there is that bit that is still lagging behind. If you look at the government, I think it's been even more than 3 years since they came into this setup of public-private partnerships. But if you look at the setup of that, how successful have they been? Very little has been obtained or achieved from that. One, those public partnerships they're very ineffective, I would say. Either the way they're structured, the way the developer comes in, it's a private developer. They're working with financing from somewhere else. For private developers, they're looking for projects that probably go to a max of 5 years. Come to government projects, they would drag for 10 years. Yeah, that's a very high risk for private developer. So I think, in my view, the government has not created a good environment for the private developers to come on board, which is very important. If you look at countries that have been able to actually achieve affordable housing, look at Singapore. They didn't do it, the government on its own. The private developers had a huge part to play. So there's need to consider how can we make these environments favorable for even private developers, so they're able to take up those projects. And other issues that are really dragging behind the affordable housing initiative is probably one, the cost of construction in Kenya. It takes up to 70% of the development cost. What can the government do about this? Can it subsidize these materials? And in that case, how do developers then reach or obtain these incentives? You see, we've had, for example, incentives such as if you build 100 houses, affordable housing units, you get a corporate tax relief. I think it's cut from 30% to 15%. That's before COVID, yeah, it was 30%.
Yes.
How many developers can actually come on board and say, I actually got this tax break?
Yes.
Yeah, there's what is there, it's there on paper, but the government needs to make sure these developers actually get these incentives. That's going to lure more of them to get into affordable housing and actually take initiative of driving the initiative on their own, because they have the expertise, they have the capability, they have the knowledge of the market. If you look at private developers, they're able to tell you where people are looking to settle. Yeah, who can we target? How are they able to finance these homes? So they have the expertise, they have the knowledge, but they need to have a good environment for them to be able to actually take up the initiative more willingly and in a economically viable manner.
Yeah. And perhaps still on the government, can tax exemption and lowering of mortgage fees perhaps keep the business, housing business afloat?
It plays a part, yes. It's one of the things that can actually be done, or some of those that have been done, but there's still more. Yeah, we really don't disregard what the government has done. We just say how much can be done, more can be done. Yeah, enhance uptake. Because, for example, if I'm looking at a private developer putting up 1,000 units, they need to be very sure there's going to be uptake for their units. What can the government do to de-risk this private developer? To ensure that there's uptake of these housing units once they are completed, so the private developer is able to work around it financially to make sure it's viable for them, the units are affordable, and they are able to exit the market more easily. So there's that bit that still needs to be worked on.
Perhaps you can add something on that?
Yes, I think there's some good that has come out of this, because if you look at one of the amendments they made, especially on retirement benefits, there was some tax breaks that were given on the saving of these people, and therefore now the people can be able to, what they are saving out of those tax breaks, they can be able now to buy their own homes or buy land to build for the retirees. But as my colleague is saying, the government needs to actualize what is on paper, because we get things on paper, but when you go on the ground, very few people who are especially involved in that field can say they have benefited from what is on paper. So like that tax break, I don't know which company was able to access them or were able to benefit from it. So in the long run, the government need to do more, and I think they need to engage the people who are on the ground, because if you go to companies which are dealing with real estate each and every day, they are not like just a Ministry of Housing, which is just somewhere in an office. These are people who are on the ground every day. They know the changing trends. They are dealing with the customers. They can tell what is happening on the ground. If we are able to involve them more and incorporate their expertise, I think the government will be able to do much more than they are doing today.
Yeah, and of course, online presence has also been something that has also affected the housing industry, because of course we have meetings, restricted meetings, we have the Zoom meetings. Has it played a key role in how the market trend has behaved since we had COVID here in the country?
Yes, and one of the big things that have happened is the aspect of the amendment that were incorporated, where you can have electronic signatures that have become incorporated. And therefore, today you may not need, you can sign those documents electronically, even with people not being at work. And this one will go a long way, because we have been having a lot of issues where, even in the past, this person is supposed to approve this thing is not available for one reason or another. And therefore, everything has to remain pending. Everything comes to a halt until they resume. But now, with the passing of the Business Amendment Act of 2020, now there is the electronic signatures, which have a game changer. So that is an ICT thing that I think is very commendable. Other than that, now is the online issues to do with online marketing, which is also something that has brought a very big paradigm shift in how people are transacting online. You cannot even meet your clients, do your pitching online. You can sell your ideas, like people who are doing marketing. They can be able to do that. But now there's some issues to do with the real estate that you can never substitute with online. If, for example, you are selling a house, of course, people are coming up with virtual tours.
Yes.
If, for example, you are showing a house, you can take people round and round and round. But now something like land, they will need to come and view. And with the issue of the meetings and the number of people you can take for site visits has been limited. So that is also affecting in a big way, because that you cannot substitute with online. But now the issue of virtual tours and everything to do with housing is something that is a game changer in the industry.
Talking about electronic signatures and land, could it pose a big challenge now that in Kenya we don't really have a very, very workable cyber protection act or laws?
No, that is up to the cyber security experts
Yes.
to come, because for every change, I think there is some risk associated with it. but also there is a positives associated with it. And they have to come up with ways of proper verifications, as they have done, because today, even in banks, the papers, they reduce even the paperwork.
Yes.
And we do most of the things online. So I think they must come with ways of proper verification of those signatures. But in the long run, we can say it's a good plan, but it need to be, it need to be done with a lot of diligence, because it's a platform that can be taken advantage of.
Yes.
And therefore, you know, land is an emotive issue, property is an emotive issue. It's not an investment of you lost 10 bob. It's a lot of money. So it requires to be done with a lot of diligence and a lot of going all out with all the eyes open.
Yeah. You wanted to touch something on online transactions.
Yeah, I think it's quite a good step. You see, when it comes to the land sector in Kenya, I think we've had so many land issues, grabbing of land somewhere, approvals that were given and revoked.
Yes.
Whoever gave the approval died. We can't track how that went. So I think it's a very huge step to digitalize the lands ministry, because it reduces that human interference. Yeah, these are processes that can actually be probably, you can follow through the process, how this approval was obtained, what were the metrics looked at. So I think it's a very huge step. But as my colleague Dominic has said, there needs to be measures to ensure that people don't take advantage of the fact that it's an online platform. Because with technology then comes people on the other hand who are taking advantage of the fact that it's not a face-to-face interaction. These are systems, and very many people are not tech savvy, so they're likely to fall for a fake website, for example. So there needs to be extra caution taken when it comes then to dealing with all these digitalized platforms.
And because of the interest of time, the future of housing and real estate in Kenya, and especially now we have COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. Yes.
I think the future still remains very bright. Remember, shelter is a basic need, so there is no running away from it. But I think COVID-19 has brought some shifts that are good. And one of them is now we can properly enjoy the issue of devolution. Because in the past, people were only thinking of town, but now there was only rural-urban migration. Now people are realizing, I've been in this rural area for 4 months, and I'm still doing okay. I found a hustle here, and therefore I can start living here. So what is happening is that now even development of those areas in terms of housing, real estate, the places that have been left behind. Now Saiton can go to Kericho and now start building houses because people have gone there.
Yes.
They are the county government workers who are there and everything. So there's a whole shift that has happened, which is very positive. And I know very soon we are going to start seeing the benefit of what has happened. Once now the economy has stabilized, because one of the biggest challenges are the issue of the purchasing power. The issue of people being very risk averse, and remember, in real estate is rarely do you buy with what you have. You are thinking about, let me risk here, let me put this money here, let me take this loan. I'll believing that in the future is good, I'll be able to pay.
Yes.
But now people have become very shy of taking those risks because you don't know what tomorrow may happen.
Yes.
COVID-19 has shown us that you cannot plan enough because you don't know what happens tomorrow. But I know Kenyans are people who are very resilient, and we are going to bounce back. And already with the lifting of the lockdown, we can already see the bouncing, albeit slowly, it's coming back. So we are very buoyant, and we know that the industry will bounce back.
The future of the housing industry, and especially in the country, now that we have COVID-19 as we wind up?
So given the pandemic that is currently ongoing, we've seen disruptions in terms of development. So we expect to see the market first absorb what is already supplied. We've had a very huge supply of apartments, and right now the development activities have taken a break. Then we expect the market to slowly absorb that supply first. In terms of focus, it's mainly going to be in the satellite towns. As my friend has said, areas outside Nairobi where land is affordable, where the cost of living is affordable, we expect to see more focus there. In terms of what the government really needs to do to ensure that, because decent living is everyone's right as a citizen. What can the government do to just ensure that they are able to achieve this objective, as much as they may fall short of their target of 500,000 units by 2022? What can they do to ensure that the initiative is actually supported enough? And first is to empower the private developers.
Yes.
Create a convenient or a good operating environment for them, so they're actually able to go out and actually take the initiative in their own hands and actually implement it. And we saw previously when the budget was being read, and there were some tax amendments that were made. For example, for people who are saving for home ownership, yeah, they were getting that tax break. We've seen that being scrapped. I think it's really needs to be reconsidered, because this was a benefit that was helping the middle income earner, the person who is only able to save 10,000 a month towards housing. So the government really needs to look at that population, because they make up the huge population, around 70%.
Yes.
Yeah, they need to look at how can we create a good environment for these people who don't earn much to be able to save towards housing. So, for example, that tax incentive that was there, I really think it was not quite a good step, having it done away with. As much as we're looking as to how the government can pull in more money during this strain, I think some of these factors also need to be considered.
Yeah. In 30 seconds,
yes,
how can you rate the cost of home ownership in the country? Because, of course, it's not so many Kenyans can afford as we are, or as the situation is right now.
I think the cost is a little prohibitive. I must agree.
Yes.
But I think with proper incentive, the government working with the private developer, they can be able to bring in, because some of these costs are translated from what you have to put in. And I said in the beginning, if you build a road, it has to go to the cost of the housing. So if the government comes in and co-work with the private developers, then at least you even be able to stabilize, because these costs will keep skyrocketing and most Kenyans will not be able to afford. But that cost can be stabilized through government co-working with the private developers.
You want to touch something on that?
No, I think it's just to add on.
Do you believe it's prohibitive, as you said? Because actually mortgages and, of course, buying a house and also buying a plot, those costs are quite high for just an ordinary Kenyan.
Yeah, the home ownership rate has been quite low. For example, if you look at statistics, around 20% of the people living in urban centers actually own the homes they live in. If you look at other developed countries, look at South Africa, look at the US, it's above 50%. What that means, what can be done to ensure home ownership? Because you see, if people don't own homes, then they're renting, they have the rent option, which is a cost every other time. So they're actually not even able to direct their disposable income to anything else. Yeah, rather, and have to focus mainly on a rent that's every now and then. And if you see the property prices are going up, the rent are going up, so it becomes quite an expense for the household. So I think there's need to just cushion them, provide a better environment, help with ensuring that property is affordable, which then has to involve the government, because as Dominic said, you can't have the private developers take on all the costs and yet deliver affordable housing. It won't happen at the current market situation. So there's need for government input, either through infrastructure, through incentives, and these incentives really have to be accessible. There has to be a way, because you see, for example, if the process is I need a VAT exemption for supplies for an affordable project, I need to contact KRA, then go back to the ministry. The bureaucracy, the processes, it becomes expensive, time consuming, and at the end of it all, you probably will not even get that. So they need to be, the incentives are there, yes, then they need to be accessible, available, and there need to be clear processes on, if there's a tax exemption, this is how you access it. And that way we are able then to move forward. We are able to work together. The two sides of the team are able to work together and actually implement affordable housing.
There were some incentives that the government offered when it was reading the budget. Do you think perhaps there are some legislation that needs to be a little bit amended so that we can make home ownership in Kenya, as British has said, a little bit more affordable?
Yes. You see, what remains on paper really reaches the people who are on the ground, because I think there's so much that is on paper, but actually the people who are on the ground can tell you actualizing them, or now that benefit being felt is very little, because today we feel even the government has given this tax break, but it has taken from another side. So at the end of the day, it's a circle where you realize For example, we're talking about those tax breaks, and then the government now is talking about a turnover tax. And now you want to target that small business owner, so that person, so that they can get a land or a house, to be able to buy a house. But now the government has given a tax break here. Then it has introduced another tax here.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, it's a flush, it's a balanced way, in such a way that no one, in fact, they never benefited at the first place, because it's like taking from Peter to give to Paul.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, the person has ended up being at the same place they were in. Their purchasing power still remained the same or went down. Or at the end of the day, there is something else, because you realize this person is in a business setting. There is the permits they have to pay in that area and whatever. And at the end of the day, they are not able to make or enjoy the benefit of what was put in those tax incentive, even in the budget. And also even those ones that are actualizable, then the government does not follow up. As my friend have said, you have now to follow up, and it's a very tedious way. And that means someone else is doing approval, which means they can turn it down. So you are going to KRA, you are going here and here, and then one person can decide to put some embargo, and therefore you're not able to go beyond there. So I think one of the things we need is the government to implement and follow up the implementation, so that the benefit they put in those tax tax breaks, they can be able to be felt at the ground. And also be able to balance, because if you introduce a tax break here and introduce another tax here, at the end of the day, it's like holding people's eyes so that they cannot see what has happened here. So they are enjoying here, but it is being taken from this other side.
Yes.
So that balance needs to be introduced, so that at the end of the day, those benefits can be said they are really being felt on the ground.
As we wind up, you think the government should do more, and especially on legislation? You have talked about everything is just on paper until we implement that, so that we may at least make Kenyans home owners.
Yeah, I think there is that bit of it's there, then how do we make it actually felt that it's actually there? And I would also want to really highlight on public-private partnerships. They're really the key to unlocking this whole thing. But until the two parties, the private sector and the government, are able to work together, it will not work. And we've had this issue of the private sector keep on raising the issue of, let's review the structure of these PPPs. Let's agree on a favorable share of returns. Yeah, let's agree then on what the government role is in this project. So for example, you take up a project with the county government. The timeline is for the government, that specific government is 5 years. The project takes 10 years. So what happens once this government is out and a government comes in? What does the private developer hold on to? Reassurance that the project will go on, will not have issues with involvement with politics, won't have a change of hand in terms of governance, then being an issue to the project. So there needs to be this sit down with the government and the private sector, let both parties lay out their issues, so they're able to get on the same page. If it's share of returns, what return is there? Because a private developer, as much as they would want to support the government in terms of affordable housing, they're there for business. If it's not clear to them what their return is, how long it's going to take for them to get that return. And most of the time, we said they're not using their own money, they're using loans, which are quite expensive. They have requirements that they need to meet. They have strict standards that they have to meet. That needs to be then well agreed upon, so they're able to know, I'm going into this project with the government, it's going to take me 10 years. This is expected return. This is my role in terms of decision making. This is a government's role. Yeah, and it becomes then easier to even work together. And the issue of government land. You see, for a private developer to be able to secure financing for a certain project, they need to provide security. And most of the time you use this land. So we have these special purpose vehicles that are created where both parties are represented, but the land is put under an SPV, that's a special purpose vehicle. So the developer can use that land to secure financing. But it comes to the government will provide land, but there's no that transition to get the land into an SPV. So then the developer has to find their own security for funding for that project. You see, there is that. Why can't there be a structure where the piece of land provided, because government has land, the government has a lot of land. It provides the land, we are able to put that land on an SPV and able to use that as security to secure financing. So then it becomes very easier for the developer to secure financing and implement the project. Because if you look at what has been implemented in terms of number of units delivered, so far we've had 228 units delivered. The rest are underway. We've seen the Park Road project, it's ongoing. We've had so many projects in Naivasha. It's yet to kick off. The land is there. We had the contract was awarded. What has started? Yeah, we are shy of 22 with only about 2 years. Are we sure we can get to the 500,000 target? I really don't think so. A lot has to be done. Projects have been launched in Mavoko. We need to see progress. And that's the only way even Kenyans will be confident that we're actually going to get housing units at the end of it all. There needs to be action past the launching. We need to see these projects actually kicking off, because the budget allocation is there. As much as it's been reduced, given the need to restructure these fiscal policies, there's been reduced budget allocation. But with the little that we have, we need to see progress. And that's the only way we are going to actualize that vision. As much as we may fall short of the target, at least we'll make progress towards it.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed. And guys, thank you so much. In case you've just joined us, we were speaking about home ownership options, and especially now in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. And actually, investment and real estate experts are on my left. We had Beatrice Mwangi, a research analyst at Saiton Investment. Thank you so much for making time. And we have Dominic Thuku, who is the director of Homepoint Investments Limited.